think you know everything, then that's the end of learning. And that's the end of actually real contribution as well. So I feel that first you have to understand the mindset has to be correct. If you have the mindfulness of being like a learner, there's always more to learn and always more to contribute.
Hello and welcome to the Superlawyer YouTube channel. Today we are with Dr. Karnnika A Seth. Ma'am is an internationally renowned expert in cyber law, IP, and media law, and with over 2 decades of experience practicing in Supreme Court and the Delhi High Court. She is a trusted advisor to the Ministry of IT and Defense and serves as a country chair of G100's Artificial Intelligence and Cybersecurity Division. As the founder of SATE Associates, MAM has made significant contributions to the development of cyber law while also being a leading advocate for women and children's online safety. We welcome you today, ma'am. My name is Anshi, and I work as an associate with the Super Lawyer team. We at Super Lawyers aim to showcase inspiring stories that could motivate and benefit our readers, which are young lawyers and legal community at large. I'd like to introduce you to Divya ma'am. Divya Dwivedi ma'am is our team leader at Super Lawyer. She has an extensive expertise in areas like data privacy, AI, intellectual property, and technology law, and other related fields. Ma'am also practices at the Supreme Court. We welcome you, ma'am, today, and we look forward to an amazing, engaging conversation with you. Divya, ma'am, if you could please continue with the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anshi. Thank you once again for bringing ma'am to our Super Learn platform. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you so much for
Thank
agreeing
you
with
so
us.
much. It's a pleasure, and I'm very happy to be here to discuss whatever queries you would have and insights I can share on mentoring the youth of today and leaders of tomorrow. Please feel free to ask any questions you'd like. But it's absolutely a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So today we have with us world-renowned Karnnika A Seth, ma'am, who will be talking today about cyber laws, how they integrate in our day-to-day life, and how she has been working around AI and cybersecurity with the experts in the field in government and private sector both. Once again, welcome to our Super Lawyer YouTube interview today with Karnika A Seth, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. So let's start
Pleasure.
with the very first and most important question, which I'm dying to ask. Ma'am, with over 2 decades of experience, when most people didn't know about cyber laws, intellectual property laws, let alone media laws, what initially inspired you to pursue a career in this field? And what led you to study at the most prestigious King's College London? How did you choose this as your specialization?
Very interesting question at the outset. Well, if I look back, my journey in this field of law, it's been very fascinating. It's been evolving just like the dynamic nature of law and technology is. And way back when I was studying at that time in the DU, that is Delhi University, I did my law from DU. And then at that time, the IT Act 2000 was just enacted. And we were very fascinated to see a new law being enacted in India. And we were looking at what exactly these nuances of this new field will be, what will be the challenges. And everything was so new that this field of law, it made me very inquisitive on what could be the legal issues which will be completely new, considering the inherent nature of internet will be borderless. No questions like will the conventional laws still apply in this medium? How will it change the way people work? How will it change the way people communicate? What kind of complications could arise? For example, jurisdiction issues if there were two parties interacting and contracting online and there is a dispute. So, which court would be the right forum to decide? Because there is no internet global court and there is no internet global law. So, that was very, very interesting to think. And I wanted to read more in depth into this field and research more and study about it and contribute to the field. So I think it's basically the fact that it was completely new, unsaturated area, completely new area to explore. And I always like to explore something which is an uncharted avenue of a subject. It makes you brainstorm. And I wanted to do this brainstorming in this field of law, and that's what really kept me energized. And I still, till date, I feel I'm a student, and every day there is so much to learn. So I may have been here 25 years, but I still feel just like a graduate would. So there is so much to learn and contribute.
Wow, ma'am,
Yes.
you're being so humble after such a long experience and being known worldwide for your expertise. In your early stages, you must have, obviously, like us, must be facing a lot of challenges. There must be different variety of experiences. As you said, that IT Act had just entered and became reality. How has all of this understanding helped you make a niche for yourself in technology law? And you decided as in where and when to start, what kind of practice you should do, how you should approach it. And you are majorly involved in training and developing all these public policies as well with the government sector. How have you shaped your whole practice around this?
Well, as I said, the field was unexplored at that time, it was very new, and I wanted to do anything and everything under the sun because this is, learning. And when you're learning, you can contribute in multifarious ways. As we say, this was a road less traveled, and I took that. And when I looked at the way in which I could basically learn and gain more experience in it, I looked at the IT Act, then I also looked at what was happening across the world. When I studied at the King's, we understood that the approaches to the same issues really varied across various jurisdictions. So we had professors, we had interactions from different jurisdictions across the world. And with those perspectives and the kind of debates in the classrooms, talking about issues like criminality, for example, criminality apply in metaverse today. Can we say an avatar is responsible for committing a crime? Is the player liable if this is an assault? It's caused in a game and it leads to some sort of mental shock to a user. How would one impute criminality in such a scenario? So those kind of questions were also at that particular point of time. Supposing a person commits a crime in one location and in one country and damages critical infrastructure of the other country, then how would the jurisdiction apply? If the jurisdiction protective principle, for example, applies, the courts would pass orders, then how would one go about enforcing those orders? So those kind of cross-jurisdictional issues were really at the helm of discussions even at that particular point of time. And if you look back, the way IT Act, when it was just a basic act, and the way technology developed, the industry developed, cybersecurity became a huge area in itself. Because with the rising crime, the industry had to catch up. So there were cyber safety tools which were being floated right from a basic antivirus to spyware to firewalls and other kind of technologies. Nowadays, blockchain, we have VPNs, we have data loss prevention software, and n number of network safeguards which we have. So this way, when the industry developed, they also needed legal compliances. They also needed legal advice. So I started advising companies on various issues which were linked with cyber law, and that was also interesting to frame their policies, to shape their HR policies, social media policy, what kind of webcams can they put? Can they scan employee emails in the name of productivity? Were they allowed to access personal emails of employees? Those kind of tricky issues came about in the early days. So, framing up the employee policy, the confidentiality, non-disclosure, and privacy and terms of use with growing e-commerce, those policies became very important. So in this way, it came to advisory role. I was also into education. So I've also taught at the Indian Law Institute, at the Amity University. In fact, I was the first batch of diplomas in cyber law in India at Amity, where I taught. At that time, also, that was an encouragement and motivation to learn more. That was just a beginning, I would say. And then I went on to study at King's and further did my PhD in cyber law. And it's been a fascinating journey all through. But as far as contribution is concerned, there were need for capacity building in the country because law was changing, issues came about, cybercrime increased phenomenally. So we dealt with those cases. I represented some clients in various forums, assisted the law enforcement bodies, not only in education and capacity building, training the judicial academies, training at the police academies across India. And then came writing. That's also a passion which I followed and I pursued. And I wrote my book on computers, internet, new technology, laws, which was released in 2012. And we have the third edition, the latest edition in the market now. So I've been writing extensively on this subject. And since it's been changing so fast, we've had already three editions since 2012. So you can imagine this is also one way in which technology has affected and created a positive impact on me and helped me contribute better to the society.
I must say that when you started your career, that was, I guess, the very point when it all became reality for India. And somehow you became the center point when you started picking up these topics, and they have become a real world scenario now, as is artificial intelligence, and we are hoping to have an act around it. So, my next question would obviously be, how do you see that this advent of this particular artificial intelligence is going to shape the kind of technology laws that we have? How is it going to influence our, I would say, not only legal system, but all of the systems per se, especially defense system, as you are with the DRDO right now, advising them in different capacities. Ma'am, how do you see all of this is going to be impacted by international AI acts also? Because there are so many of them from which we also take a lot of references. Like with DPDP Act, it has happened. So where do you see we lie with the artificial intelligence? And what kind of track are we going to take? Obviously, it can only
Yes.
be speculations.
So I've been advising government for more than 2 decades now, and in my personal experience, it's been a very enriching journey. The way we have shaped our laws and the way we have looked at technology, it's been a very liberal and progressive approach. I do believe and firmly believe rather that one should allow in a liberal way the technology to advance and have R&D in the country because truly, India, when we say Make in India, Viksit Bharat, or Digital India, we have seen this revolution and it is ongoing and in process. We are already working towards India at 2047. So, looking at that, we are already building our roadmaps, plans, and already implementing milestones to it. And it's not just in one department. I'm talking about Department of Ministry of Law, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of IT, and Telecom, Ministry of Home, for example. They're all trying to bring in instead of reinventing the wheel each time, they're now coordinated. They're much coordinated, and there is obviously scope for more coordination. But with the adoption of PPP model that we see now in the AI space, India AI, the kind of projects which are floating, we are very, very thrilled and delighted to actually work on those because they are actually creating a right platform for India to progress in the right way. There is going to be minimum regulation because if you put too much regulation, it will stifle the growth of the industry. And that's the approach of the government also. And rightly so, although I feel that high risk systems need to be immediately regulated because they can play havoc with people's lives and bring destruction to countries. And for that reason, I strongly advocated that there should be a regulation. In fact, in my mind, there should be a separate regulation for AI and as a voluntary initiative to support G20 and as country chair of G100 AI in cybersecurity, I drafted a proposed act for India for AI, artificial intelligence. And I would like the government to look at it. And in various roundtables with the Honorable Minister also, we have had discussions and we know the DIA Act is already there in the offing and it's pending legislation where there will be certain provisions to curb fake news, to high risk systems which have to be prohibited and regulated. There will be some regulation to that account. Although I think we still far away to have a separate legislation because there's no talk on that right now. But you never know. The way technology is progressing, in my view, this will become indispensable very soon. So let's see how it goes. But so far, so good. The government is taking a lot of interest and initiative, and we are truly world leaders in making India space. And I think the law will support the government's approach and initiative to that account because it's in the interest of the industry.
With India AI, I also have been quite active, and there have been a lot of talk going around in including the cultural and diversity impact also in AI, because only ethical part and specifically language doesn't help. It has to have some cultural aspects. Where do you see all these things are going to have an impact, and when it will happen for the common man, because everything is happening on the policy level right now. Somehow once it become a reality, like you said, you have already drafted a AI act for media to see, and once it becomes a reality in your eyes, how do you see it is going to impact a society at large? Because we, as you said, that we are number one in the world in many contexts related to AI, but we are also culturally too diverse. Where do you see we sit in terms of laws? Because we cannot pick and choose from different jurisdictions. It has to be exclusive, like you also said. How do you see we are going to make an impact by having a very different variety of AI Act with support of cyber laws and intellectual property laws as well?
I think we have already begun exploring the key pillars, and we know that Niti Aayog has also done some work on the framework of ethical principles. I have been working a lot on this space of late, and whether it comes to national projects or otherwise, we're already integrating both in the education sector, in institutions. For example, I'm a professor of practice or WIPS, and there also we have released a particular ethical framework for AI. And when it comes to those principles, they are global principles which are across the world. You would see a lot of organizations have endorsed. For example, transparency, justice, inclusiveness, sustainable development, and no bias, and other parameters. So these are there. Yes, regulation is different for different areas, different jurisdictions. And while in EU we already have the AI Act, in India we have yet to have one, though we may have provisions under the DIA Act, as I just mentioned. So, considering that the work is ongoing at the policy level, I agree to that statement because we are doing that. However, industry is also progressing very fast, developing its own robust AI models and LLM models. Considering our cultural diversity in languages, the number of languages we hold, we are already building multilinguistic resources to have AI trained in it so that it can be translated, it can answer in that, whether it's chat GPT or otherwise. We need multilingual approach now, and that's already ingrained in most of the models that we are developing in India, in the Indian context. So yes, likewise, the laws also have to be cultural specific because in the sense that there has to be homogeneity to whatever extent possible. It should be synchronous with the global laws as well because we cannot work in silos anymore. Whatever AI we'll be building or training or utilizing will at one point or the other, maybe processing or storage or otherwise, maybe travel out of India. So then the compliance is needed not just from the Indian point of view, but also from a global standpoint. Why in the GDPR, for example, we have SEC contracts, standard contractual clauses? Because if the data has to go out to another country, it has to meet with those guidelines. Likewise in India, we also have DPDP. It is homogeneous, though we have cultural diversity. Data is data. Personal data of any region is personal data. We find something to homogenize the basic framework. And based on that, yes, you can build on. Likewise, we should also have a framework of rules, maybe for AI, or for that matter of fact, anything we are building in India or any data which is being utilized here or sent out for processing, there has to be some ethical framework. Yes. Apart from that, some regulation. Also, we cannot segregate the data which will be input in the AI model. So the data also has to be carefully taken. Any permission, is it needed or not to feed that AI model with that data to train it? In Delhi High Court, for instance, there's a new case of AI versus OpenAI, where this is being discussed in detail that AI said that there are reports which the OpenAI has just their AI engine has verbatim given in its output certain things which have been used in training, which are resources of AI, ANI, and without permission have been fed as training input to the AI. So was a permission required in the first place? Issues like these are new. Is a copyright infringed by training it without seeking permission from ANI? And which court will decide this? Can we assume jurisdiction over these issues? And if there is a judgment, for example, in case there's a judgment given by the Delhi High Court to say that ANI reports copyrights is infringed, so there will be a permanent injunction and damages, can we enforce it against OpenAI? Those, how do we enforce it? All these questions are very important questions of the AI ecosystem we are all trying to build today. So AI regulation, therefore, is not far-fetched. It is something which is already there, and we will need to explore our borders to understand what principles will hold good. And it has to be from a standpoint that is at the most possible globally accepted as well. Because ultimately we don't have a UN convention also on cybercrime or other conventions. So how do you get compliance? How do you get enforcement? Even though you may assume jurisdiction and maybe come out with a judgment, pass a judgment, how do we enforce it is another aspect to be considered.
Ma'am, you picked up the case where if it goes positively towards OpenAI, then we'll have to see how copyrighted material will be protected and how we are going to guide our LLMs for future generations to come. Ma'am, you have been so busy being an author, being a professor of practice, practicing in several places, being in advisory roles, and still started your law firm. How have you managed to do that? What prompted you to start this law firm in the first place? Because you already were in several spaces, dominating the whole cyberspace and AI practice area. What led you to decide this?
I think the main factor behind this was that I wanted to maintain that flexibility that I could contribute in multiple ways in this field. Because if I was only doing one role, I would not be able to utilize the knowledge I gain from there in the other sphere. Here, first of all, learning and then teaching taught me the in depth of problems related to the law. Then, when I went on to advise, I had to assimilate my thoughts and say, okay, whether this view is correct or not, and based on certain precedents or certain interpretation which is possible. Then, when I went on to policy, for example, I knew in the courts where were the lacunas. So, if there is intricacy involved in a law, some lacuna, some gap, if there's a guideline, for example, missing guideline on when does an intermediary need to take down content in which time frame, for example, these rules only came in 2011, that 36-hour time window you have to take down. So with growing complexities, these gaps were identified through litigation also. There was one challenging case where I was representing a spiritual guru in the Delhi High Court, and at that time this case was against hub pages, and this was a foreign website. So the question was, how do we get them to cooperate and submit to the Indian court's jurisdiction? So there were defamatory pages made on their platform which were being published, and we wanted a permanent injunction order against that website to take down that content. So the registrar of the website cooperated, and then the court also they submitted to the jurisdiction of Delhi High Court. And Delhi High Court said that you have to take down those pages. If you don't within 36 hours, you will have to take down the entire website from visibility in India. So that kind of orders were passed because new complications were there in the law and certain lacunas were there which got filled in with the new laws. For example, dynamic injunction orders in copyright and trademark cases now. This allows even the same clip which is taken down from a link, if it is uploaded on a new link, you can remove it based on one single order instead of filing a new action every time. So this way, law also evolved with time. And in that way, I think we learned a lot from litigation. And we had a better advisory role that we could play with that enriched experience. And further on, one could do writing with this law firm practice. One could even spare some time to do writing and share your thoughts. And then health and policy making, because you know what the gaps are and how you can fill them. So that experience also mattered. Speaking at industry forums, interacting with on trainings with law enforcement, government officials, even IS officers, police officers, judicial officers, even students. It was like a window to the world of what lies ahead. There were so many things to be traversed and introspected and brainstormed. So this helped the experience of advisory role, public policy, and with interactions with them actually opened those issues out. So we could think about those issues. One could think deeply about those issues. As a researcher, we would research on how globally these problems are being tackled in various parts of the world. Should it apply in India? How could it be different? and then we would make suggestions to the government on bringing new policy reforms. So I was happy that I could contribute to the new criminal laws which came about in the country, the data protection laws which emerged, the AI debates which are ongoing, and recently the DPDP rules which were passed. We've already given our suggestions in this regard. So the experience that came from interacting with industry forums, with multi-stakeholders in different capacities actually helped us contribute our best. So that's what I personally felt I could do justice to whatever I learned. I could give back to society, to our nation in the best possible manner by creating a law firm.
Wow, ma'am. You have opened a platform for people to learn and to reach out to. And you are also very well known for your contributions to women and children's empowerment, particularly in cyber safety space. Ma'am, there is cyber psychology space also in the same, and I'm pretty sure you're working in that as well. I would request you to elaborate on your work with the organizations like UNESCO, ICMEC, and the kind of global efforts that are being taken, and how are we implementing the same or a little modified version for Indian women and children? Because obviously today it has become very important to make people cyber educated. How are you doing it? I know you are doing a lot, and I would love to hear that, ma'am, please.
Well, this child protection or women empowerment has been at the core of what I have done also in terms of cyber law, because this is one area when it comes to digital arrests or other harassment that women face or children face online. A lot needed to be done because there was so much vulnerability, lack of awareness, and the laws were weak. They had to be strengthened. So I'm glad that I took up this research long back, and in 2015, I wrote the first book in India on child protection on internet, and that became a part of my main subject of my thesis also in PhD, wherein I gave a lot of suggestions on what are the laws which India lacks and where protection can be enhanced, including reforms in the JJ Act or the POXO Act, and how our law needed to be stepped up to what was already there in maybe US or other countries. So, and this brought a lot of new policy measures and was instrumental in contributing to some of them. And also wrote extensively on women rights against cyber crimes. I've written a book on the same, which is available online on the ISEA portal, which is the Information Security Awareness Wing of the Ministry of IT, which I wrote. And this book on protection of children on internet is yet another book which is very interesting. So, capacity building was one of the other ways in which I contributed to this. I also set up a not for profit only to devote my time whenever possible on the awareness. And I created a team where they would do capacity building for schools or for colleges. And I would interact sometimes with their founders or even students or teachers at times on building capacity and empowering the women and children on cyber safety skills, best practices. And I'm glad to share during COVID, when we were all sitting in our houses, I did close to 50 webinars only in that year. Every second day, there was one or two webinars, every second day. And it was phenomenal the way technology connected us in those times of trial. And we could empower ourselves sitting at our home with technology. And so many women and children who were actually being targeted, or the vulnerable sections of people, they were being duped online by fake emails or fake propaganda to sell vaccines or take health incentives from the government. They were basically warned by us. We said, it said that these are fake. Don't make fake donations on fake websites. Don't fall trap to all these malware being circulated. So a lot of awareness was needed, and I think we could best contribute at that particular point of time through that measure. So I did that, and that was very, very fulfilling and satisfying because I saw the change. There were a lot of women and children who, even from schools, educators, teachers who contacted and had webinar sessions, very extensive sessions, even with law enforcement. So we were able to mitigate the kind of loss or harm that could have been otherwise caused in whatever measure it was done. I'm quite glad that at least we could make those steps.
Thank you for extensively contributing to this. This is need of the hour, and people need to be aware about cyber safety, how it works, and why they need to be safe, and how they are vulnerable. And 50 webinars in just 1 year. Absolutely mind blowing. I'm pretty sure there have been thousands and thousands who have learned from you, and not only learned, they have implemented all of these. Ma'am, you have also worked a lot in intellectual property protection realm related to digital space specifically. What kind of primary challenges that you have faced or that industry has faced and they have reached out to you in order to find solutions for them, and how this kind of business can better protect themselves, like just now you talked about OpenAI case with relation to ANI. All of this impacts intellectual property as well. So they must have reached out to you. You have fought cases for industries. Where do you see all this is going, and how are we going to safeguard the rights of especially the intellectual property owners?
Yes, because intellectual property as an area has also grown phenomenally over a period of time. We needed new set of laws. Initially, I would say it was not known whether domain names can be protected just like trademarks. So those were early days when it was held that no, yes, they will be protected as trademarks. So I've been an arbitrator for the National Internet Exchange of India and passed many awards where cross-border disputes on domain names are involved, where .in domain was involved. And we see that a lot of protection is being granted with clarity of INDRPA rules. So we would use those principles to see whether there is a bad faith registration, there is a deceptive similarity or not in the mark, whether the goodwill in the mark has been affected, and how the prima facie case is there or not, regarding that particular legitimate use of the mark or not. So those kind of issues were there. And from then on, you see the increase in cyber litigation for IPR related cases increased in music piracy cases, video piracy, film piracy cases. And I've been an advisor to Prasar Bharati also when we overhauled their entire royalty contracts. There were about 50 contracts or so, or few major ones where with artists or otherwise. Those contracts had no mention of internet at that point of time. So very recently, we also looked at those contracts to see whether they are in sync with today's times. So this way, industry as well as government needs to look at their contracts and policies. And while the industry is making strides in creating new technologies, they have to also deploy in their own organizations those policies and technologies. For example, we're talking about AI today. So AI governance and audit are so essential now that even in the DPDP, when we say audits are required, so we need to have clarity on what kind of audits will be necessary, what will be the role of the DPO, what kind of governance models are required. If a business model is working, are they collecting more information than what is necessary? Are they in breach of the law? These are the kind of questions which industry needs to come up with. Is the data unbiased? What is the data which is being used? If any trade secret is being discussed or if any NDA has been signed or not, can we use a redaction tool? Can we hide the sensitive information? Should we save it in the servers only in India or should we have a private or a public cloud outside? So critical infrastructure, how we protect that. Can we protect copyrights and trademarks by registration? Yes. What about trade secrets? They have to be also protected through confidential information and other means. So IPR has grown over a period of time. Today we are talking about AI images, AI based art, AI based music. You enter a text and AI model will immediately create, or you write a painting like Mona Lisa with a specification changed. It will create that. So who is the owner of that image? Is it the person who is entering the text or the prompt? That is normally the case. The need for watermarking. There have been reports where competitions have been won by AI generated art, and then later the prize was withdrawn because you could not have created an AI based art and competed in this competition. So need for watermarking, need for redaction tools, need for DPI compliant technologies to transfer any sensitive data in an email. All these policies and new technologies have to be deployed now by the industry. So the industry, while it is progressing to create new technologies, it has to also imbibe encryption, anonymization, pseudonymization to protect confidential information. So I'm also like advising, say, social sector. Social sector has data of donors. It has data of beneficiaries. Now, it cannot go out of India without encryption. Without encryption, you cannot send out financial details of anybody also, whether it's bank account or otherwise. So we advise on those aspects. We advise on the policies, the contracts, how the terms have to be there, whether they're in compliance with the law of the land or not. All these aspects have to be seen. Not only creation of technology is the responsibility of the industry, but its equal partner and responsibility lies in adopting and abiding by those set of laws which will govern its functioning. So that is how I see industry contributing in this space.
Industry, and like you said, PPP is the new mantra.
Absolutely. Government and private partnership is the new mantra because it is giving the best from both the quarters. It's giving the stamp and the authority which the government can provide, the resources it can provide, at the same time, the technical know how and the capabilities that industry has, the knowledge it has. It can work wonders in a win win situation and for the progress of the nation. And I think that's the wonderful approach that they follow.
Everyone's motive is that nation should be number one, and somehow we are approaching towards that. And thanks to people who are involved, like you and many others, ma'am, there have been talks around all of these aspects which you have said, that sometimes industry thinks that these are restrictive as well. But as you were saying, that government is having a liberal approach towards regularizing all these things and giving acts immediately or regulating authorities. Ma'am, how do you propose to guide the aspiring lawyers who are looking towards specializing in these fields, especially media law, cyber law, or even IP, which is now growing leaps and bounds? What kind of skills should be there? What kind of focus should be there from their side? Are there certain books or journals or people to follow? Because one has to understand where to start, because it's too big, it's too massive, and it's national and global both. There is no
Right.
national or international portal where anyone can go and get all the knowledge. So you will be the right person to guide them, please, ma'am.
Well, in my view, I think once a student, you're always a student if you want to contribute to this field, because if you think you know everything, then that's the end of learning. And that's the end of actually real contribution as well. So I feel that first you have to understand the mindset has to be correct. If you have the mindfulness of being like a learner, there's always more to learn and always more to contribute. So that's one thing. Second is you have to be very passionate researcher, because unless you research, you can't get to the depth of things and brainstorming. And it's a mind's game ultimately. So the more you read of different perspectives of people, the more you see different jurisdictions, how they are tackling these problems, the more insights you get to distinguish and to identify common areas. So you're able to apply those learnings through filtered eyes, and you are able to see what will fit here and what will not, and how you can tailor make it or customize it for India. Then that's another thing. Third is obviously nothing comes without perseverance, and you may start very passionately in the area but get disheartened along the way. There have been ups and downs in everybody's career. Nobody is very fortunate to have all projects and plans clicked in the first go. It never happens. Therefore, one has to accept challenges. The best approach is overcoming challenges. If one is determined, no matter what, you're able to overcome a challenge through your perseverance and hard work. So you may not get results immediately, but constancy will bring results in the long run. That's what I've learned in my journey of last 25 years in the profession. And there are times when your views may differ from maybe another stakeholder or industry, but the time will obviously test waters and see maybe the same policy which you have suggested will hold good in the coming days. And that happens many times, that things change, viewpoints change, and the circumstances change. And then your policy, which you have said or you have emphasized, becomes so important that one can't proceed without it. So be open to criticism is something that I feel is important because it helps you grow. So this is what I feel you need to be as a good lawyer or a researcher, especially in this area, which is super, super specialized now. We have DPDP as a whole set of laws. We have AI law as a whole set of law. You will have IPR as a whole branch of law. And they all are at an intersection. Sometimes they interplay with each other. And often they do, because in a single case, you will have multiple issues dealing. You can't say, I will only deal in IPR and I will not deal in jurisdiction issue. A case may involve multiple issues. So you have to be open to understanding that this interplay will be there at every point of time. So you can't just keep yourself in silos, but work with a broad approach. Apart from that, I think there are wonderful resources available today. We never had education portals and platforms at our point of time. The kind of portals which are there today, yes, we had access to information, knowledge, but needed to assimilate it, needed to analyze it. But now there are plethora of opportunities, apps, tutorials, educational platforms, and wonderful courses. I've also done one course from EDX, which is on cybersecurity CS 50 from Harvard University. And I found that fascinating. Again, I did this during COVID because we were all sitting at our homes and we wanted a meaningful engagement. And this was one of the things which I took up at that point of time. And it was fascinating to see how the professors there taught the subject and how we used our Indian law knowledge and used their perspectives to shape our policies in India. So this has been again a game changer, the way technology and education has intermixed. You have a lot of e-libraries, you have Manupatra, you have SEC online, you have access to e-libraries, and digitization has brought in virtual courts now. You can learn sitting at any place. You can just open a proceeding and you will actually watch. Nothing like watching a real courtroom proceeding. So I think we are blessed to have so much to learn from. And experts are there, mentors are there. I'm a mentor to Heartron as well. And they make drones there, they make robots there. We've seen them make them and shape those technologies. Even we've seen robots being built. There are education institutions promoting startups, incubation models are happening. I've seen what DSCI or other NASCOM and other forums, the kind of impetus they give, the kind of stimulation they give to the students to have their own startups and ideas. So these incubation centers are also a wonderful way of learning, trying something new. So I think there are many opportunities, both in terms of resources and the courses that you can take up. In India also, we have this e-Pathshala, we have Swayam. They are free portals of learning which any student can enroll in. And wonderful subjects being covered, the number of subjects, and I've contributed to some of these online training sessions of the government also, be it IS officers, lawyers, engineers, or even government officers. And there's a lot to learn in different aspects, different modules of just cyber law alone. There's so much to do.
Thank you so much for enriching us with such knowledge and elaborate about how government is working towards betterment and how it is interacting with industry also. We are getting so much from internet, so much from international guests, and the way you are contributing to society. And we are so thankful at Superlawyer for you to be here and give us so much time and such beautiful conversation where our learners will know how and what to look forward to and how we can learn online also. It's not that we are now only restricted to books, photocopies, and prints. And once again, ma'am, thank you so much for agreeing to be here. It has been an amazing, amazing experience for us. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the entire Superlawyer team for reaching out to me. And through this platform, I'm able to interact and reach out, share my thoughts and views. I think it's a great mentor platform, and Superlawyer is doing wonderful work in this space because they're actually handholding the youth, and they will actually be able to be like torchbearers or lighthouses to actually show them the way through us. Yes, of course, different speakers who will be coming and sharing their life journeys. And it's been a fascinating experience to be here on this session of Super Lawyer, and I'm sure you will keep up the good work that you're doing in this space. And I'm obviously proud Indian as a national. I think we are game changers for the whole world now. I truly proudly say that. We talk about Make in India and we talk about Viksit Bharat. We are making standards from the world now. We are not just making software, which was there a couple of years back, but I'm thoroughly enjoying this journey of being in this field of law, cyber law. And the way it changes its dimensions, it will continue to grow like sunshine. So I'm sure you will all have your own contributions to make, like Superlaw is doing here. and let's make our nation proud through whatever we do. Thank you and Jai Hind.